In India, we prayed over this young boy who was deaf and blind, I believe. And we literally prayed healing over him, and he was able to see and also able to hear and speak again. So it was just so crazy to like literally just watch this little boy not be able to see anything, and like you're like talking to him and he's not even like we knew he was deaf, you know, and then to pray over him and to have that happen just so tangibly right in front of us was so crazy and so wild, and I have to remind myself of that often.
Welcome to the Selling North Georgia podcast, episode 3. This is Corey Shields, and this is Sarah Veal.
Hi.
And I'm Michael Williams. All right, Corey, let's get into it.
Well, Sarah, this is the first time I've ever met you. Let's just open it up with, what are you all about? Who are you? What you been doing? How did you even get in this chair?
I got in this chair because I got a text about an hour ago that asked me to be in this chair. And I'm spontaneous enough to say yes.
And it's appreciated.
Of course. I was born and raised in Dalton. I moved off to Milledgeville for college, came back to Dalton briefly, left for a year and a half, the whole country left for a year and a half, and then came back, married my husband, moved to Gainesville, and then recently we moved back to Dalton. So I was a missionary for a year and a half. I've lived in 14 countries.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow, 14.
Mm-hmm.
How lived in these countries for
Yeah,
how long were you there?
For a week at a time.
For a month at a time. But I was part of a mission group called the World Race. It's based out of Gainesville, and we basically, there was a group of 30 of us that traveled together. We moved countries every month. Those were like pre-assigned countries. Lived out of backpacks, literally had our shelter, our beds on our back if we needed it. Didn't always need it, which was a blessing. But yeah, I did that for 11 months, came home for about 45 days and left again, leading a trip for 18-year-old women to Southeast Asia for 3 months.
So you, make sure I understand, you had a stint of traveling around for quite a while, then you went back home for 45 days or so?
Yes.
So whenever you went back home, before you went back out again, were you thinking, oh man, I'm glad to be home and I don't want to go back out, or what was your attitude there?
Definitely mixed emotions. Definitely hard to come back to the States after being gone for so long. Just a lot of like culture shock reversed. But then you get really used to air conditioning and running water like in like one day, you know? And so then you're like, oh shoot, I'm about to like leave again and do this. And the countries that I was leaving to go back to, those were actually the hardest countries that I was in the whole time. So that was, if I had known what I was about to go into, I probably would have been putting the brakes on a little bit harder, but it was like I was excited to go back out into the field for sure.
Harder in exactly what sense?
We were a lot more remote. We were in Cambodia during monsoon season, so the whole country is just kind of like mildewed. You know, like your clothes never dry, you're never dry. Like it's just constantly raining. Our living situation there was the hardest living situation that I've been in. It was definitely a harder experience than the whole prior year, just that like 1 month.
Yeah.
So
My goodness. What was the best experience you had while you were doing it?
The best experience was definitely India. It's one of my favorite countries in the whole world, which a lot of people are like, really? But
When I say favorite country in the whole world, though, it's like, well, there's Mexico, Canada, and the United States. So that's my whole world. I haven't been anywhere else. When you say the whole world, I'm like, well, I can take that legit because you've been everywhere.
Right. So India was for sure my favorite place. The culture is so rich there. The colors, the food is fantastic. We ate curry 3 meals a day. I had never really had a lot of curry before. Fell in love with it. Make it regularly here. Our ministry there also was just super incredible, and we saw a lot of miracles happen, and that was what just like draws my heart back to India for sure, was because you like saw those real life tangible miracles that you read about in scripture, and they're just like happening in front of you, and you're like, wow, this is crazy, and like the Lord still works like this. So that was for sure the best experience.
What was the, I guess, most eye-catching miracle, or like the one that caught your attention the most? Like, oh my goodness, Jesus is in this, you know?
In India, we prayed over this young boy who was deaf and blind, I believe. And we literally prayed healing over him, and he was able to see and also able to hear and speak again. So it was just so crazy to like literally just watch this little boy not be able to see anything, and like you're like talking to him and he's not even like we knew he was deaf, you know. And then to pray over him and to have that happen just so tangibly right in front of us was so crazy and so wild. And I have to remind myself of that often, you know. Come back here, like you say, you don't see stuff like that every day, but just...
It's like the air conditioning. You know, you come back and it's like, did that really even happen? Like, is that really there?
Which is why I'm glad that I wrote a lot of stuff down in my journals and stuff, and just being able to read back through all of that is super encouraging.
So, it sounds like there might be a trip to India in the future.
Yes, absolutely.
But before you get back to India, you decided to sell in Gainesville and move back to Northwest Georgia. So
yes.
Tell me about that. Why?
So a couple months ago, we were home. We had a late Father's Day celebration at my parents' house. My in-laws and my parents are really great friends, which works out super nice. So everyone was together, and I'm expecting my husband and I's first child. And so our parents were all like, oh, it would be so great if you guys moved back, you know, closer. We can help with the baby and like, you know, all of that. So it was just kind of like being thrown around and joked about. And then my husband and I, when we drive back from our parents always visiting, we always have like more in-depth conversations in the car. And he was like, I really have missed like being around our family. And I was like, yeah, me too. And so we started talking about it, and then things just like started rolling, and he found a really great job here. And I was able to resign from the hospital where I was working, and we sold our house in like 3 days. So
imagine that.
Imagine that, yeah. Which was only because we asked people not to like give us our offers until the end of the weekend or whatever, you know. So we sold our house, and we are currently moved in with my parents. So we moved our 3,000 square foot house into theirs, which has been a lot. But it's been really great and a blessing for sure to have somewhere to go while we search.
All right, so you said you had a house in Gainesville.
Yes.
So the house that we're looking for today is not going to be your first house. So
right.
Tell me about this home buying experience on your first house. How did that go?
It was not the best experience, just to be honest. Our realtor really tried to be great, and things just didn't work out as well as they could have, but we did end up with a really fantastic house. So all in all, it worked out. But I legitimately went to closing questioning if we were even like buying the house that we thought we were buying, and that all of the paperwork was going through, and it's like, did we actually get this loan? Like kind of thing. So it was a little bit anxiety inducing to say the least. Yeah.
So it sounds like a much better experience when you sold.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So moral of the story, not all realtors are created equal.
No.
It's true.
They are not.
I'm just curious. So the house that you sold in Gainesville, how do the values compare, like what you sold for, and are you finding what you want for the price that you bought down there? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. We lowered our budget a little bit from what we had, just because I am expecting, and so just wanting to kind of counteract just for the expenses coming up and whatnot. And then also I would love to be able to stay home a little bit, so going from 2 incomes to 1 currently. But you know the market's crazy right now. Y'all are realtors. You know that it's just absolutely crazy. So it's been hard because we bought at a really good time.
Sure.
But then I feel like buying right now is also just a little bit more challenging. But I have full faith that Michael's going to find us a great house that we can afford.
The pressure is on.
It is.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thanks.
So you're expecting it. I meant to say that a minute ago, but I got sidetracked by all the cool stories.
It's a little boy.
Do we have names?
We have names, but names are secrets until baby is born.
I am really fond of Michael. That's a really good name.
Oh, okay. I'll keep that in mind.
So where exactly are you trying to be now that you're up here?
So my husband got a job in Dalton, but as much as I love Dalton, I would really love to live a little bit closer to Chattanooga. So somewhere kind of Ringgold or even Chattanooga, just within a certain commute distance from here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So does it matter, like, do you want to be a little closer to the Huntsville side? Would that be helpful? Maybe
It
Fort
could
Oglethorpe,
be.
Rossville.
It could be just still within that commute distance is probably going to be more important. My mother-in-law is retiring. That's a secret.
You do realize
I'm
this
sure
is a
her
podcast. It's
employer
going on YouTube.
Won't
and
be
Instagram
watching
and everywhere
this.
else.
It's totally
Literally
fine.
millions of subscribers.
She will be hopefully more available, and it will be fine for her to commute to our house.
Understandable. Yeah, there's nothing like free childcare, right?
Right.
Enough to bring you from Gainesville to Ringgold.
You should have seen her when we told her. She has been wanting a grandchild for quite a while now, and she was sprinting around her house with her arms in the air screaming. So she was very excited.
Awesome. So I guess what questions do you have for the two realtors in the room?
Oh my goodness. Basically, I want to buy a house, but I don't want to like way overpay for it so that I can't sell it and not lose money in the future.
When do you want to sell? In the future.
In the future, 5 years.
Okay.
Ish. We were in a very unique position because we only owned our house for 14 months before we sold it the last time. And then we made a lot of money, you know?
So let's look back 5 years ago, 2016. A 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Whitfield County in 2016. I know you're looking at two, so let's just say Whitfield County. In 2016, probably cost you about $150,000. Right? A 3-bedroom, 2-bath today probably cost you $225,000.
Yeah.
That same 1450 square foot house, right? $225,000. So 10 years ago, that 3-bedroom, 2-bath probably cost you about $40,000 because there were foreclosures everywhere. Right. So yeah, the question of how can I buy a house today and not lose money is an interesting one because man, if you had told me in 2016 that a 3.2 1,400 square foot would sell for $225,000 in 5 years, I'd be like, oh, I don't know, buddy. Like, you're paying the top of the market price today at $155,000. You know, this same house sold for $37,000 in 2011. So, you know, it felt very toppy in 2016, 2017. There was a moment in 2019 in the early fall of 2019 where nothing happened. The market just kind of went, and everybody freaked out, including the person in the mic. And I'm like, wow, what just happened? We only sold 3 houses this month, and normally we sell 12 or 15. And so I'm like, whoa, what happened? And then it started back up again. So there was that little blip where everybody was a little worried. So, boy, it's hard to predict, for 5 years from now. Here's what I know. Over the last 50 years, the average interest rate is almost 7. It's like 6.9%. And today's rate is around 3%. So I would tell you, like this, if you're going to buy a house and get a 30-year mortgage or even a 15-year mortgage, if you're going to get a 30-year mortgage at 3%, there's a really good chance that that's either the lowest you're going to get or it's very close to the lowest you're going to get, right? Okay. So a lot of people don't understand when, let's just say the market corrected by 20%. You're going to buy a house for $250,000 and that house is worth $200,000 a year from now, and you're able to go buy that house for $200,000 a year from now, and you're like, hey, great, we saved $50,000. Well, that's true, but if the interest rate you pay is 5%, your payment is actually more.
Right.
So, like, the difference in 3% and 5% is huge. So, I don't think the market's going to correct 20%. It barely got to 20% in the last crash, and that was the worst in history, right? So, if you're waiting for a correction of 20%, that was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And the interest rate is more than likely going to go up from here because the rate that we're getting right now is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Like, we've never had lower rates. Constantly setting records with low rates. So I would tell you that, let's just say, like, Zillow and all the NAR, National Association of Realtors people, they all think the market's going to go up about 7 or 8%. Right? So that 250 house is really going to cost you 280. What would really stink is if that 280 also is tied to a 4.5% interest rate, right? Like, that's terrible. But if you look at history, 6.9% interest rate, well, that 4.5 sounds awesome compared to the historical average. So I feel really good about helping somebody buy a house today.
Okay.
I just don't see a scenario in which you will regret this. There's a ton of money being pumped into the system as far as the Federal Reserve goes, and so the same goods and services are being chased by a lot more money. So if that's the case, those prices are going to go up. Mm-hmm. People are paying more in wages now. I mean, you as a nurse probably would recognize that. You know, after you have your child and you go back to work, they're going to pay you more than they paid you before. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing there's nothing on the horizon that tells me that there's a crash coming or anything. Okay. Now, there might be a black swan event where, you know, another thing like COVID happens and shuts the country down for a month. Who knows what will happen if that goes down, but all of the signs point to you being in really good position to buy a house now, which is one of the reasons it's so hard to find one. Right? Mm-hmm. It's really difficult to find one because there's a lot of people that understand that and they're like, oh, we need to buy now. Mm-hmm. So that's where we are.
And you kind of touched on this, but I think it's funny looking back. Whenever I was first getting started in real estate, like 16, 17, 2016, 2017. Not when I was that young.
I was like, wow, I'm so impressed.
No, and then I would be showing houses and people, of course, like, oh, I want to get a good deal. I don't want to pay the list price of this place. And then they would anyway, because that's the way the market was then as well. But if you look back now, they paid list price back then, but well,
they made $60,000.
Yeah, they're doing just fine now. So it's just one of those things, like you can't. How are you going to possibly predict that?
Right.
You know? But like Michael said, doesn't seem to be any indicator that we're going to be tanking anytime soon. So.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's flat and the interest rate goes up 0.5%, it costs you more money. Even if prices don't appreciate.
Right.
Although almost everyone thinks they're going to appreciate it. So, yeah, interesting. All right, we have anything else, Corey? Might be time to wrap it up. All right. Well, Sarah, do you have anything else for us?
I don't think so. I'm just excited to work with you guys, and I am looking forward to this experience.
Well, we are excited to work with you, and I am so pumped that you came back to town and chose us to work with. So,
and we're pumped that you're on the podcast with less than 1 hour notice.
That is amazing.
Incredible.
So, in that same line, Hannah Rogers was supposed to be here today with Movement Mortgage. She's going to be a future podcast guest, and we wish her family well and recovery from COVID-19, which seems to be everywhere these days.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, with that, we are signing off. Thanks for tuning in to the Selling North Georgia podcast. That's Corey and Sarah, and I'm Michael. Have a good one.
See you.
Bye.